Okay, you said I got
All
it.
right, so I'm going to share screen on the Botvinnik games. There we go. Chess dice. I found a good chess games collection. Have you guys Googled those chess games collections for certain openings or certain concepts?
Yes, but I
Yeah.
usually use chessgames.com.
Mm-hmm. Through chess, yeah, through chess. Oh, you do it through chessgames.com or rather than Googling it?
Well, yeah, I Google like, I don't know, King's Indian or whatever, chess games, and then you can get different collections that people have made, or you can look within it, although it's not the greatest, but it's, I find that to be the resource that I use in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. I just Google it, and I'll just Google site, for example, Botvinnik System chess games collection, and it'll immediately put some stuff. It'll populate some, chessgames.com stuff, or same with the player. Okay, Botvinnik chessgames.com, and then you'll get his profile, which is super useful. And then, as I mentioned, the Wikipedia page is very interesting, really interesting, guys. So this is his first game against Soderborg. Oh, rather, no, I wanted to show this one first, actually, against Sherbakov. Okay, so I don't have the year in front of me. I can pull them up later. So yeah, I just looked through a collection. I found two that I liked. So these are really instructive for the Botvinnik system. And I mean, there's a bunch of players, obviously, you can look from, and we can do that afterwards, where especially on chessgames.com, we can filter. Chess.com, we can filter and see the top rated players, as opposed to just, again, on Lichess, it'll show us the average top rating. So we can just find top players who have played it and look at different move orders. But this is real instructive, the way he's playing. So it starts as in English. Now, Black can do various things. White can pretty much always achieve this if they want, unless Black goes like D5 right away or something, tries to disrupt the structure. But for example, even if they do, you should be pretty happy to take it and to get a reverse Sicilian or something if Black goes E5, but you have more center than them, you're going to strike at the knight, provoke them to take and get even more center. So I wouldn't be worried about this. This is it's saying the Anglo-Grunfeld defense. So it's kind of like, we talked about that last week with the Indian systems. It's like Grunfeld reversed. So that comes out of an English. Okay, G3, bishop G7, bishop G2. So usually both fianchetto. Black doesn't have to, but, and there we go. I mentioned in the email there, that's the one problem with the Botvinnik. What was the problem that was just created here? You're playing certainly for the light squares, a lot of control over D5. So as I mentioned, the early D5 push, that's going to be pretty hard to achieve. Similar to a Maroczy bind, if the D pawn's traded off, you make it real hard for Black to break. So we got that lock in. We definitely locked in the light squares. That's our strategy largely. Just like Black will often, like in a dragon, Black's playing for the dark square complex. But what's the problem here? A potential issue for White that they're immediately taking on.
A D4.
Yeah, exactly, Lynn. D4 square. It's theoretically a weakness. Well, it can never be guarded by a pawn. And that's why I mentioned I like to play the Great Snake. I play this a ton in tournament games. It tends to always work well. It scores, look at it, it scores really well. So for example, something like this and knight G2, I'm already seeing pretty nice scores for White here. Let's say, the main line, something like that, just to give you a sense. I did a video on this once on different systems. So one is the Botvinnik system and one is the Great Snake system. I don't even go D4, you go like B3, but see, it scores pretty well. Not many wins for Black in these types of lines, but I've seen Magnus do it. Kasparov has done stuff like this, even against F5, E5, you strike back with F4. So anyway, you could do this and you don't take on the weakness on D4, just so you know you have an alternative. Now, E4 is a little more aggressive, of course, and you'll see that you can play F4 ideas. You can play on either side, but you can certainly play F4 and F5 stuff. Depends on the setup by Black. In this case, they go for E5. So essentially, what is the system that Black is adopting here, which they can adopt in many cases, very flexible. What would this system generally be considered? Usually it's against a D4 system, but what would you generally consider this? I'll give you a hint. It's under the Indian defenses, like last week. It's one of the Indian defenses.
It looks like maybe a King's Indian.
Right, King's Indian, because the old style, called the King's Bishop, right? Queen's Bishop. As we talk about later, right? Queen's Bishop is Queen's Indian. King's Bishop fianchetto is King's Indian. So usually, they will usually play this against D4, of course, D4 and C4. But for example, let's say you start with C4, they'll just do it anyway. They're like, okay, I'm going to treat this like a D4 opening. but this is obviously a little different. You would arrive at this. You wouldn't. Yeah, you're more likely to arrive at this from C4 as the first move. But they're just trying to do the same setup. We're kind of like a modern defense, like against E4. They can, without C4, they could play a modern defense. Same thing. Often C6 is played and things like that. But yeah, this is real popular. A lot of people would do this against me. For example, with the Great Snake. I have had some nice games with Botvinnik though, with F4, F5 attacks. So we'll see that.
Is that a real name or did you make that up? Because it's hilarious. The Great
Snake. No,
Yeah,
I've seen
I
it.
never heard that.
I've seen it. Yeah. Well, actually, it's more like it's basically like a dragon, like a closed Sicilian reversed, but somehow, so it's either a dragon or it's a snake. You could call it a reverse dragon, closed or something, closed, reverse, whatever. But yeah, it's just, I guess it's because you have these connected bonds. But that is really the dragon idea too. It could be you're hitting it with the dragon tail and the fire breathing dragon on the diagonal. But yeah, and that's with E3. So yeah, E3 has its benefits. I like it because it's more solid, yet it's still aggressive. You can certainly play F4, which is a nice tool you can use. It's like you turn it into a bird opening with F4 and B3. So it just becomes like a bird / English, which in the bird, they often play C4. Capablanca has even done that. Yeah, but with E3, it's just real solid, but eventually you will strike. You can still play D4 in many cases. And again, B4, B5, of course, ideas. And F4, and so it's really flexible. But so is the Botvinnik system. Just know that you're weakening yourself on the dark squares. But as you'll see, there are remedies to that. So it looks bad positionally, but it's not often terrible in practice. You'll see how he handles it. Can often trade the knight and so forth. So he goes knight BD7. Now knight C6 is pretty direct, but Sherbakov goes with knight BD7 to go to C5. And what would you usually see if the knight wants to stay on C5? There's a common theme that black would do to maintain that square for the knight. What do you guys think it would be? He doesn't do it here, but just in general, just to know.
A5.
Exactly, Andrew. Yeah, A5. So essentially A5 grips the C5 square. Because why? Because there's no B4. And it's the kind of thing where, remember we've talked about this. So just for example, like H3 or something random, then A5 can be played. And if you want to keep the knight, if you want to keep it there. And after A3, remember we go A4 if we want. Then B4 we take en passant. That's good. So the point is they won't be able to. They'd have to go B3, then A3, so that en passant doesn't happen anymore. Then kick the knight. But the thing about this is transitory. So it's just an idea to keep in mind that, again, it's part of black's strategy to get those talons on the dark squares, right? And hey, maybe black wants F5, F4 himself, like a King's Indian, if white lets them. Yes, that's their strategy. But the thing is, the knight, it's transitory. It'll probably go to E6 anyway, which is why I'm thinking, well, why don't you just go to C6 right away? I don't know. They go to C5. Well, it clearly didn't work out for them. Okay, so Botvinnik does the F4 thing, right? Often you want bishop E3, but keep in mind, what is the annoying move that plays? Just certain themes that'll keep cropping up. What's the drawback of bishop E3? Potentially, though, black can do an annoying move.
Knight G4.
Exactly, Nikki, knight G4. That's, we don't usually like that because you want to go queen D2, maybe go bishop G5 or bishop I think they tend to go bishop G5 a lot. You can obviously trade the bishop, even if it's a bad bishop, it'll create weaknesses. Well, theoretically weaknesses for both of us. But are they exploitable? Well, that's why you often like to trade off the fianchetto bishop. And as I mentioned some stuff in the email about trying to grab those squares. Not easy, but it's possible. For example, in lines like where you don't, in English where you don't play E4, let's say this week, maybe black plays like E4 themselves and grabs the F3 square, and like a knight goes to E5. So, or like G4, G5 to grab these things like that. It's not easy to do though, but just keep in mind, that's why you probably want your dark squared bishop to try to come in and probe these squares. So if the knight gets to take, probably pretty happy with it, although it would control the D4 square. But then black will, black will strike with F5. Black will get a lot of play, and that bishop will come to life. You can easily go like H5, bishop H6, hit E3, or just like try to tear open this diagonal, this one. So yeah, you don't really want to give up the bishop usually in these situations, because this is your good bishop, right? So yeah, so if you're going to go bishop E3, you actually can go H3. So for example, you go F4, C6. So sometimes they're forecasting. Well, it's tricky. They're going to forecast that they're going to go queen D7 and in. But before they do that, that's where you get h3 and king h2, and that's fine. So you cover h3 and they don't get knight g4, so you can complete your setup. All right, so I would often do that with h3. And that might actually precede g4, f4 stuff. So you might want g4 as well as part of your pawn storm. So just keep in mind. Now, you don't only go for a kingside attack. Remember, you can go for the kingside attack, you can go for this b4 stuff, and you could sometimes even go for d4. Trade it off and get more of a, yeah, it's closer to, well, Meraxi bind would be removing this, but you'd have that bind with your E and C pawns. So it's very flexible, that's the point. But we're going for f4 in this case. c6, very typical in these kinds of positions. I mean, may as well contest the d5 square, bring out the queen if you want, maybe b6 actually, that's probably the idea there. And yeah, maybe, hey, if they let you go d5, right, that would be annoying. They can demolish white's center, you know, finish the development. Really, the goal is black would like to have this bishop stay on c1. You know, interestingly enough, sometimes you play king h1. I've seen this in close Sicilian. There's a close Sicilian line like that. So again, it wouldn't have c4 be here, but you would go king h1, bishop e3. If they go knight g4, you have to be ready for knight g4. You tuck your bishop on g1, kind of those tight Karpov-like bishops. Usually he has bishops, bishop e3 to f2 to have a Karpov type bishop, which I'd call it, to cover your dark squares. He doesn't like that. Yeah, he often would do that. Now it would be with f3, for example. Let's say you have f3, e4, so you'd usually cover the dark squares with bishop e3 to f2. But the other thing, I tend to like h3, bishop e3, but keep that in mind. You probably want bishop e3, but in this case, it's a little more urgent. You're kind of like, okay, why did you you're spending some time to go knight c5. You might want to go to e6 anyway. So let's hit him with f5, maybe even tempo against the knight if it goes there. Let's just try and start attacking. And he's going to probe. I think he does it pretty quickly, yeah, in the next few moves. So he does play h3, as I was talking about. He does play h3. 96, that happened as well. So common stuff. And funny enough, it says there's been one game played, which was in 2004. So as you can see, the Lichess database is not exhaustive. So it should, if anything, it should have the Botvinnik game, right? And white won that game. White won that game too. Both 2200. So pretty realistic. Did you not have a mismatch in rating? Okay, so 96, 5. So you're interestingly, so you allow knight d4. Now, what's one of the remedies? He doesn't actually do it now, but what would be one of the remedies to knight d4? Given that the annoying knight would like to have that secured as an outpost.
Do we just snap them off?
Yeah, exactly. You guys are on fire today. Yeah. Knight takes, pawn takes, 92. I actually had a nice game like this against an expert once, and he just kept waiting and waiting and waiting. My pawn was here, but I'm like, okay, I'm taking that. You remove the tension. I'm just not going to go like this and just kind of build over here. And I just kept maneuvering, and eventually I just started like going g5 and broke down the f file and stuff. But he just kind of waited to see if I would do anything, and then eventually, passive defense failed. So I didn't commit to. I have it. Yeah, I remember. I have a picture of like a game I play. I'm like, when I was a kid or a teenager. When I first started getting in tournaments, and I was like, oh, I see that position. Like, oh, there's the Botvinnik system, right? The guy had the pawn here and push, and then end up making that same kind of attack. So it's, yeah, I played it a long time ago as well. It's a great system. So g4. So he just goes with this. But the thing is, he can definitely take on d4 whenever he wants. He might insert, I think, bishop e3 to even make him worry about losing a pawn. And ideally, you'll just have black take your knight. You don't even need to let them fill in the hole. You don't really care if they do. It gets a little space for black. But as I said in the other game, my opponent taking on d4, remove tension, just let me have a nice fluid attack on the king side. And a nice play. And he didn't really have it. He was so rigid. He had a lot of rigidity in his position. Okay, so 98. So it's very fluid. And yes, yeah, bishop e3. He's not threatening it though, because the bishop's covering d4, right? 2 guards. But still just annoying. They have to deal with this. But let's see, what's he going to take it with? Queen d2, there's, like I mentioned, this is classic, this is the classic approach, which is why I like this game. Okay, so black is approaching this kind of like a modern defense or a perk, very common. That's what Topalov did against Kasparov in the famous, the Rucksack game. I guess it's Kasparov's immortal game, where Topalov did it, but Topalov castled queenside, and he tries this, but this is very common in this. So this is like modern / King's Indian type defense, right? This setup. And then b5 is very common. And Kasparov did it against Karpov in his game where he rated G, the rated G game on chessgames.com, where he pushed all of Karpov's pieces to the back rank. B5 strike was used as well, and that was the King's Indian. So it's very common to go for this. Just try to chip at the light squares a little bit. Bishop G5. So there's that Bishop G5 rather than Bishop H6 right now. And I think he's probably just provoking F6. Then you can, if you want, you can proceed to H6. But you'd be, you know, be making the bishop bad. I might want to just drop back and say, okay, what are you gonna do with your bishop now? And I can play across the board. Might want to go G5. So this is just bad. And later on, you can make an H4 break. You can even play on the queen side. And now the knight, now that he wants to take the knight. So yeah, this would be great. You can trade the bishops if you want. I think this would be okay as well. That doesn't do anything to play H4. So, you know, F6 is just weak. A lot of holes around the black king. Probably not advisable either way for black. So that's why he doesn't play F6. He traded off his bad bishop, but you know, like I mentioned, you know, you kind of want to get rid of your bad bishop, but it's a weak. It creates those weaknesses, right? Or it makes them more exploitable. Theoretically, the weaknesses are there right after G6, right? G6 and E5 have been played. Pawns 2 apart from each other makes a weakness on F6. H6 because of G6, you know, right? No pawn to cover H6 now. So yeah, it's interesting, but you can actually, it's kind of counterintuitive, right? That you would trade immediately, but no, it's similar to Bishop H6 and takes, right? So black is allowing this though. But as you can see, the weaknesses are pretty might become critical. So how would you guys assess the position at this point?
Said that F6 was weak, but it wasn't really that weak because it was guarded, what, 3 times?
Right, he's not winning anything on F6, but you're kind of trying to win a little more control over it in a sense, or make him tied down to it. But I mean, although you're not going to take on G6, I don't think. And the rook's going to cover unless it's some extraordinary circumstance. But it's just kind of, again, the dark squares. Well, the bishop doesn't cover H6, for example. So it's, and the queen's got to be careful about the knight. But here's another thing: we can continue our pawn storm.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got G5 and F6 and all that coming. But now he deals with the knight. So he's not going to let the knight sit there forever. There's his remedy for the knight. You say, okay, well, the pawn gets to come into D4, but does it really matter that much? Not that much. And a lot of times they will play C5 to guard it, and then that D5 square becomes attackable again, potentially. Let's say you go knight F4, kick the knight, maybe you come into D5, things like that. It creates the rigidity though. If what you don't want rigidity, C5 is, then there's no more break options for black. So guards it with queen B6, keeps the options open a bit. Actually, he wins pretty quickly here. C takes B5, A takes B5. So he just removes the tension. Or for example, you know, if you start attacking him and you're not careful, black's just going to take on C4 and, well, then unleash. If you go queen H6 right away, for example, it's a bit, you know, dangerous. And then you're gonna have to give up the knight. And you better justify this. This may not work right away. You know, black has some resources. G5, knight E8, similar to the game actually. But now you are down a knight in that case, so you don't have that resource to bring in your knight and attack. So it's going to take a little while for white to get an attack going, and black's up a pawn. Not to mention, sorry, up a piece. He could be up a pawn too. So queen does come in, but you see he's removing the tension. And I mean, unless you want to take with the queen, probably not. This doesn't actually do anything. You just go queen F2. Yeah, so that's just a free pawn for white in that case, and he'll continue. But white has a nice center now. He'll move the knight eventually, and he could even go to an endgame. I mean, it's just up a pawn. So yeah, you can't really take with the queen. Takes with the A pawn, opens up the rook at least on a half open file, A file. But then we got this. So now, but you see he's removed counterplay, basically. There's nothing to really worry about right now. And
that bishop's just been sitting there the whole time, like doing nothing. His light square bishop.
Both of them are both of them.
Yeah, black's more than white. At least white's moved.
Right, or hasn't moved yet. But you know, it's interesting because often in the King's Indian setups, it will stay there.
It just chills.
Yeah, it just chills there. And then it might, and then it'll like sack itself later on or something like that. So I think I've shown, did I show you guys a King's Indian game like that? I don't know if I showed you the Fisher game. Famous, it's in the chess collection, Lee chess collection on pawn breaks. So yes, famous Fisher game. Yeah, he locks it up with E5 and C5 against Korchnoi. And then he ends up sacking his bishop. I think it was on H3, and lots of pressure on these files, finally sacks. The bishop just doesn't move. I think it might have moved once, actually, sorry. But a lot of times it doesn't move at all. It's not doing much, right? Until it sacks. So, but it's patrolling, you know, it could be patrolling sometimes.
Yeah.
So people think, oh, what's it doing? It's like a bishop e7 in the French, you know, the pawns here. It's just patrol, you know, it's got options. Bishop d7 in the French, not so much, because it's locked up. All right, so then he does go bishop d7. But now, of course, we go g5, and we're attacking. Knight goes to h5. Okay, what's a natural move right now? As I said, we didn't give up our knight, right? We still have some resources. We have, but Nikki, I think, well, the bishop might be utilized. You might utilize the bishop. It's more of, if anything, more of a defensive piece. In certain positions, you might tear open the line with e5, but here we don't need it, you know, in this position. But yeah, we have these pieces to attack with. So what should we do?
Would you push the pawn F to F6?
We want to go with that, Lynn. Yeah, we're gonna also do that to try and mate on g7. You know, actually, I kind of like that move order. He didn't do that move order, but I kind of like that because you just go f6 and attack the knight. I think that probably wins pretty clearly, right? I don't see a good defense.
Well, I don't know. The knight can take him back. So.
Oh, you're happy with that's fine. You're gonna mate on g7, so you can't really do it.
Yeah.
So I think well, he went knight f4 first, and then I think it took him a little longer. Well, his opponent resigned right here, but it's not an instant mate, but it looks like, you know, h4 h5 and irresistible attack. Well, you break through. I think you break through and you sack on g6 or something. That looks pretty hard to hold. And you can always do a rook lift. Yeah, you could do a rook lift whenever you want. It's interesting though. Sometimes if you take and the rook takes, sorry, the pawn takes, the rook can guard laterally, or like even rook a7. Imagine like something like this. Bring your bishop back, Nikki, right? Let's bring our bishop back to c8, where it's going to be not in the way. And then we can defend laterally. So you have to be a little careful, actually. Don't get too excited about taking the g pawn sometimes. But I think we'll take, you know, take once, demolish this defense, and then a rook lift would finish things. So you have that. But I think, Lynn, it looks to me, I don't see a defense to f6, because the idea would be that you would then attack the knight. I mean, you could even go bishop f3 or knight f4. Just go knight f4 and just take the knight. I don't think there's a defense, is there? Rook move. Wait, hold on. Rook move. Knight comes in. Can't take as a mate. Queen back, no time. Knight takes. Okay, you want to challenge. You stop the mate, but I mean, you could do it. You could just take it and game over. Just up a piece. So at the very least, yeah. So I'm not really sure why he didn't play f6. We could check the computer. Am I missing something? I mean, I guess he just thought it was good enough. Although, like I said, remember from the Wikipedia article, it said that he viewed himself as not the greatest tactician. But that's pretty straightforward, though. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. No, I mean, he just thought it's good enough, I guess. But am I missing something? Is there any defense to f6? No, and like I said, but no, he is good enough. He's obviously good enough. He was the 3-time world champion, and his strategy was amazing, just restricting his opponents, and no, he can finish with some nice tactics. But what would Black do here? It can't be anything. I mean, he's just in this mating net. There's no.
He's got no counterattack that I could see. No,
there's nothing here anymore. Even if there were at this point, you can sack your knight or something. It wouldn't matter anymore. There's no recourse with the queen. Again, like sometimes you'll have queen coming to f8. That's a move. You'll just have to lose the piece. Let's see. Computer says, oh, king h8. That's why.
Oh, come on. No,
he was a good enough tactician. No, he's obviously amazing too. But no, king h8. I'm still winning, but yeah, no. Either way, you have to maneuver a little bit. So that's why. No, duh, king h8. Well, that's the only way. I mean, there's no other piece that could come. Yeah, it's a typical action. Unless you had a knight ready to take f7. But yeah, it's not. It's going to take you a little bit of time, actually. So king h8. Yeah, I think the bishop f2.
Looked at rook f2. What? Rook f2?
Yeah, I know about rook f2. I mean, yeah, the computer will find stuff like that. But definitely king h8. Yeah, for some reason, wasn't looking at king h8. I mean, it just seems so irresistible. It's like, go f6 and get rid of the knight and mate. Yeah, of course. Rook g8 is the only resource. So that's why he went for, now we know. And then, well, the thing is f6 is coming next. I was just thinking maybe the move order was quicker. Because now the knight gets to run. So he goes here, but then the guy resigns. Yeah, now it's saying mate and 8. Oh, wow. Knight to D. So of course the computer finds something cool. Well, why? Oh, okay. Okay. That's really nice. Do you guys see? Okay. This one I'm seeing, but it's a really nice idea because all you need to do to achieve your mate is what? What's the only obstacle to achieving your mate? And how do you make it happen?
Just gotta get rid of that knight.
Right. And how does this move, work, work to do that, to that end?
Oh, goodness gracious.
It actually takes a little bit of time though, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because eventually we're hitting the queen. So hitting the queen, hitting e7. So
we hesitate.
yes, they probably take. And then what if you just take back? What's coming next? Can't remember. They're just completely tied down.
No, well, can white knight go over to C7? I mean, I know it's right
The
in
black one or the
line of
white one?
it's in the line of fire, but it may be tempting for the black knight to take him back.
Oh, you're saying for white or black to go to C7?
White.
Well, he'll take the queen if he can. No, they'll just take it. They're just getting rid of the knight. So we're not going to go anywhere else. I mean, I guess they can go. I guess they can retreat. But then we'll probably just toss in the check. And then how about a rook lift? Okay, that should do it. We can actually do a rook lift and sack our queen, like Anastasia's mate. Yeah, you see, the rook lift. Or just do this. Either way, I think either move order. Again, he's very limited in the things he can do to defend. Yeah, so he would take probably. What if we just take back? It's a little slow, but what's the idea next?
Maybe bring the other rook over.
Just bring the rook to the E file. Well, that's the defender. Remove the defender. I think there's nothing to bishop e6. I just take. You're breaking through. And then finally we unleash our bishop for what it's worth. I mean, we might use our bishop on d5 or something like that, but we don't need that much here. We just want to try and take the knight. There's really no recourse here. Let's say queen back or something like that. And then you're threatening this. Oh no, well, let's do the same defense for him. Let's do the king h8 defense.
We just take the rook.
Yeah. So first it worked, now it doesn't. Yeah, there's nothing to do. You're just gonna rook a1, you're gonna take. And again, the only thing might be foreseeably bishop e6, and we can take our I just take it. Threatening e7, he takes. I mean, I had some blind spots in it, but I'm sure there's something. I think we're good enough. Just taking it. Oh, that's interesting because he does have the lateral defense, but then like rook a7 is that option again. Interesting. There's some stuff there, but we don't have the see. Like I was mentioning, it's going to take a little bit of work, but we are getting our piece back with interest, basically. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're going to go. I think we're going here, and the only way, yeah. So king h8, since that is so congested. Okay, do we have anything else? Okay, hold on one second while you guys figure out. Okay, after this, I'll be right there. So after this, what is the most efficient win? Maybe there's some f7 stuff coming up, some bishop stuff. Take a look. Probably rook takes. Let's see what else.
Guess we could take the rook in the corner, but that seems kind of counter to what we're doing.
Probably rook takes to e pawn.
Yeah, I agree. I think rook takes e pawn is definitely better than just bishop takes rook, which has nothing to do with our attack at the moment.
So what are you guys looking at?
I'm agreeing with Lynn.
If he goes there, then
which move? Rook takes pawn, or
rook takes pawn.
yeah.
Oh,
Rook.
then there's another move. We can also
Yeah,
consider taking the bishop. The bishop takes the rook. So I mean, we have that too. I mean, the problem is everything's basically hanging, everything's congested. So that's interesting because we don't even give them a chance to play rook a7. So how about let's take this first? They have no counter checks, no nothing. You always have to look for f7, but I think this is done. I mean, they can go here, then we'll double or something. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much done. I'm tempted to try to make f7 check work as well. That probably works actually.
It will, but the rook's gonna take him right back. So
then we make him come here, and then we take.
Oh, then we have some fun.
Is not working. It's
oh,
very.
then you bring the e rook to f.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's tricky. He runs to E7, you take H7, he goes to E8.
He
Right.
goes
He goes to he goes to
H7.
D8. He can run a
Yeah,
little bit there.
chomp.
Okay, how about let's take first.
yeah.
If he goes back, we have rook F1, so he goes here. Then we check. Yeah, then we can check, and then we'll take the knight. Well, we're gonna be up a rook. I mean, there's and then we're gonna win a queen. We could do this. Do we have we might have a quicker mate, but yeah.
Yeah, you could
At
win
the,
a
at the
queen.
very least, we can
Go
win.
on and get
Yeah.
that queen.
At the
Yeah,
very
he's
least,
got
we're
a
not.
queen.
Yeah, we can find a mate probably.
Yeah.
Too. But either way,
Just win the end
nice
game,
thing.
whatever.
Yeah, either way it works. If they go here, this is good enough for me. Well, that line's a mate right away. So anyway, but that looks like why he resigned. So F7 is real strong too. But yeah, you just go here and there's really nothing to do because the immediate threat of taking. And you want to give it here, but that's interesting that the D5 pawn then crashes through. And finally, the bishop's unleashed and finishes, just takes the rook and there's no recourse. So there's that game. You guys have any questions about that? That was pretty
Yeah,
much
that knight move was hard to find though. I mean, I have to say, like, that's a hard, like, I thought that was difficult to find that knight
I don't
move.
think, yeah, definitely. I don't think you need to find it, but let's see at the end. But the main thing was the F4, F5 concept and the
Yeah.
notion of the knight D4 isn't that big of a deal. If you can take it and fill it, you want to fill it with the pawn ideally. Now, if you're playing with black, you'd want to have, bishop G7, knight C6,
Uh-huh.
you get another knight on it. You want to be able to occupy that ideally. Yeah, and hold off white's play a bit. Maybe get a 5 in yourself or something. So where were we? The moment when before rook
Yeah,
takes E6, it was
Something like,
oh
yeah,
no, it was knight G5 here. Yeah, that's a hard move. Now
that's, yeah,
I
like,
don't
if you
think
don't
we
find that, like, what do you do? Like, you just keep doing your rook lift, or do you start like ramming down your H pawn, or like,
yeah, I think the H pawn, because well, I mean, we could literally just move our knight out of the way. I mean, that's going to be strong enough too, probably. If we just move we can calmly retreat our knight. The thing is, again, he has nothing. Now, no, it doesn't help either. I think we can play 1, 2, 3 moves. And if he ever goes king H8, rook G8, we can still sack our queen and go rook H4 and mate. So there's so many mating ideas. And the problem is that he can't move the knight because he gets mated.
right,
Oh, and he can't move his king. And as we
Right.
said, he never
Right.
has the king moving these lines.
right.
So the knight can't move to connect the rooks. The king can't move because you get mated on F8. Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, there's nothing to do in these lines.
Okay, so it's just like a little fancy little finish.
Right, exactly. Since you could
Okay.
play calmly and probably win pretty quickly, but why not toss the knight on him? Because
Yeah,
it says mate in 8 with knight D5. Let's see. But again, maybe there's some defense we're not looking at, but I'm pretty sure this should be overwhelming. Like, let's just assume we have this position and it's going to, on the next move, we're going to be able to play rook F4. Let's just say we have this position. It's giving us +6-ish, it's good enough.
okay, so it's, yeah,
enough.
that's good.
We're still winning, probably keep
Yeah.
going. We're still winning, but I mean, that's not glorious, right? So
No.
it's a tricky move to find. Well, yeah, and the other thing is maybe this is, yeah, you have this idea, which is kind of cool. We were focusing on taking the knight, but maybe rook F4 is even way faster. That might be simple enough, something like that's that's faster. But I do like this idea of taking the E file and maybe go, taking a rook. There's some cool stuff. But yeah, we want the fastest win, so I think that's got to be faster, right? Yeah, there's no defense. So either way, we're winning. All right. So there's that game. So remember, it's this concept. Okay, when black goes E5, you often want to play F4, and then there's some interesting stuff we talked about with bishop E3. You could do a lot of times you could do bishop E3 without committing to F4. So again, you might want, well, H3 has been played here, as you see. So H3, say what's A6, whatever. Let's say they go bishop E7. But see, the idea is that after, let's say that they like to do this sometimes, especially at club level, they'll often try this kind of cheap trick, or maybe a blitz game. But then you're very comfortable with this, actually. It looks like you're kind of going, I call it like going to the second story. King just goes up in his tower, kind of going second story, and yeah, there's no check, no nothing in this position. The only time that they can attack this, or you have to be careful, like with H5, H4 stuff, or sometimes they have some sort of knight sack with H5 usually. Some knight sack, and then you take, and then it opens it up. So you have to be a little careful sometimes, but in this type of position, for the most part, you're totally fine here. And the idea, though, is that it's keeping, but it's actually covering, it's strengthening your light squares. Because before, like I said, if you don't do anything, that's the point. If you don't do anything, then they might go something like this, and they want to come in and hit the light squares. But the point is that you make it, sure, theoretically the light squares are a little bit weak, but you make it so they're not really attackable, right? You're fortifying it. You're turning it into like as if it's a pawn on c6 or something like that, guarded by some pieces. So yeah, so that's an idea. Bishop e3 is a big idea. But watch out for the d4 scare. So trading off the knight's really important. And we'll see another one where he goes for b4. I think he's gonna throw in both actually. Take a look at this one. So this is the Soderborg one. Okay, let's go back to the board. So same type of thing. Now this one, he's coming immediately into d5. Well, just to show you the opening book, this is by far the most popular line with knight d5. But the idea is now, so black would like to fill the hole as well on d5. So that's an important concept. We both want to fill the hole. And the thing is, I mean, it's not a hole. It's like a potential kind of outpost, or at least temporarily. It's not a permanent support point. They can always go c6. But the thing is, if they can fill it, that's probably fine in a lot of cases. So now it's like, well, if you want to take with your knight, I'm going to fork your knight and bishop. But just a note that if you take back, in a lot of cases, you do get c-file play. So just a question of whether black gets to play c6 against it. So that's an important concept there. So there's some tension around d5. But there's that queen d7 idea again. If you don't do anything, they probably would like to go here and come into h3. And if you go h3 yourself, you can't castle yet. You can, funny enough, you can sometimes play h3 and just castle by hand if you have time. There are lines where that works. But anyway, so knight starts challenging it. And then bishop g5. So I like this. He's immediately placing pressure on f6. Again, you notice that he didn't go for a bishop h6 himself. So you see that tension there around, do I go to g4, h3 or / g5, h6? Because it's very tempting to come into h6. But sometimes bishop g5 is really effective, because you combine that with knight d5 maybe, or f-file play after castling, for example. So bishop g5 is very annoying to probe the position. Creates some pins maybe against the queen. Knight g8, queen d2. Okay, very comfortable setup. And there's that potential for f6 again. But it's the kind of thing where you'll just draw your bishop back and be like, okay, you're blocking your bishop more. What did you achieve with f6? You spent a move, I spent a move. It's your move again, but I don't think you really improved the position other than taking the bishop away from that diagonal. But it's a little weakening, obviously. Maybe white will go h4, h5, right? Stuff like that to hit some of those points. As well as maybe just castles again, f4, f5, and try to open up some stuff. Okay, so h6, bishop goes back. Yeah, there you go. Bishop also went back. c6. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Kick the knight. So it's interesting. He's just retreating. But theoretically, black has created some weaknesses, some soft spots, right?
Yeah.
They're very patient. I mean, this is not necessarily typical. It's probing. It won't happen all the time, but once in a while you can try this stuff. Say, okay, my pieces are out there a bit. You can kick them back, but now, okay, now you have to worry about h6. You have to worry about d6, maybe b4, b5. So rook b1, typical English stuff. So for example, let's say the pawn's on e2, typical pawn chain, expand with that dragon tail again, right? Or the great snake, right? I'm on the diagonal. Sometimes I've done this. I've even gotten in. When I was playing around with the English at first, I'd be like, I'm going to go b4, b5. My coach showed me that back in the days to show me this. You would often even, you do this, but sometimes you even get in, just keep pushing and, just open up that diagonal. And yeah, lots of good stuff. Maybe the half open b5 or attack on a7 or something like that. So that's like typical English stuff if you have time. But at the very least, b4, b5, chip at c6. And in doing so, you're trying to undermine d5. So obviously you want to utilize d5, or at the very least restrain black from the break. And when you see this, in the previous game, went a6, b5, if they can get d5, and they'll certainly do d5, try to demolish the pawn structure, or maybe even fork, right? But just striking at the pawn structure, and f5. So you have to watch out for d5 and f5. The black needs play too. So, okay.
So is it better just to play like b4 right away, or do you set it up with a4? Like I always get confused with that. I think we talked about this already. Sorry to bring it up again.
Oh,
but like,
no, that's important. Now, Wait, A3 or A4?
A4, like
Oh,
A4 to throw
you
in.
wouldn't want to go A4 because then they're
Okay.
going to go, well, they want A5 anyway in many cases because they can
Okay.
reroute the knight
Okay,
to C5. Well, you may or might not, you probably don't want to take the open up against the D3 pawn, right? So they can probably just sit very comfortably on it with the knight. And again, creating, we call it like an artificial support point because it's not really a hole. Now, if you play B4, B5, they will come in. It's give and take, right? If you get
Right.
B4, B5 in, you are, because again, you can play D4, but they have the grip there and they take. So it's like de facto holes or C5, for example. Like
Mhm.
theoretically, it can be attacked, but black will probably just take. And so they get to keep a knight on C5. So similar, yeah. So they want to go here and come in here, and they're actually going to grip. They're going to grip all these squares. So you can just see a lot of pressure on the, maybe they
okay,
attack.
yeah,
too,
okay.
So that's why. But no, A3 would be possible. Although you don't need it here. Probably that's why I mentioned rook B1. That's very common.
I see.
They might go A5 and you might go A3. And again, watch out for this annoying move. A4. So again, if you have a chance, just probably play it. And then you can always come over and support it. You probably castle pretty soon and support that. Or you castle first, then go for it. But remember, you're very flexible. I mean, you can go for D4, but the tricky thing is bishop. Now, in this case, that's why he plays B3 actually, because he's focused on different options. He might go for D4 or F4. But you're very flexible with B3 coming up. But yeah, but definitely, especially after C5. If black goes C5, then you can break. You get the break and you'll strike on the half open or open it up or strike against B7 eventually. Maybe bypass, but probably just keep pressure and open up the B file or strike at C5.
Where do you go with your knight after that? If you
Uh,
strike, like if you go C5, right, and then you go B4, you take, does it, and he takes back, Does he take back?
if black taking on B4,
Mhm.
well then you chip at his center. So basically, this is controlling D4, but it's trying to grab the D4 square. So this would be, trading well, it's not a central pawn, but it has a lot of influence over the center, of course, like D4 square, if it's here. So you'd be trading that for a B pawn. Ideally, you actually have A3, and that's even better. Takes and takes back. That happens kind of like in a Benoni, like where black goes B5, if they ever take. That's great, then black will get all this play over here. So similar to that, right? You get to take, take back, have the half open A file, keep thrusting your pawns anytime you want. So yeah, but also C5 weakens D5, C5 and E5.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes black just goes C5 and plays it more like a Sicilian type of structure, like a close Sicilian, because then it doesn't block the bishop. So that's another way they can play it. Not in these games, they both went for E5. This is pretty common though, the way black's playing. So again, approaching it like a King's Indian. It's like a King's Indian, but white held the pawn back on D3. If you have this structure, yeah, obviously you have to be careful with the C pawn. You might have something like this, and this would be more like a King's Indian, and black would have basically the same setup. And they can, just like if white plays a King's Indian attack, they love the King's Indian. So like, I'm just going to play the King's Indian no matter what, right? They can always do that and almost always can achieve that. It's not like the most aggressive thing against certain systems, but it's consistent and your system. That's actually what I covered in that video. Yeah, I think I covered like King's Indian attack, the Botvinnik system, the Great Snake, and the Hippo. Those are at least 4 that I covered. So just systems you can rely on. The Hippo is very hypermodern, but it's interesting. All right.
Is that your Mind on Chess? That's your Mind on Chess. Or what's the name of your channel again?
Oh, it's Chess on the Brain.
Chess on the Brain. Okay.
So if you Googled that, if you search for that with what did I call it? Openings, I guess just opening systems, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I already subscribed, so I just have to check it out.
Yeah, it should be up there under opening systems, I think. Okay. All right, so B3, C5. So he did play C5. So we're both playing for these squares, respectively. We want D5, he wants D4. So we both have that hole. But again, we can both, you come in, you have to time it out, because if you come in, they can fill the hole. So it's like, well, I'd rather, generally speaking, as long as you don't get forked, right? But generally speaking, I'd rather have a pawn in there than a piece in there in my territory, right? So right, there's but see, interestingly, he still might go for B4. He went B3, it doesn't mean he can't commit to B4, right? He hasn't committed yet. Rook B8, okay, we both have similar ideas. And funny enough, we go F4, sometimes black will go F5 also. And then the position will just blow open. So it starts pretty locked up. But once F5 happens, you start exchanging. Oh, there you go, like a Tarrasch defense. Tarrasch is the same idea with the D and C pawns tension that could blow open with the Isolani, right? Remember that one? Now we have this, maybe black or white will end up with an isolated E pawn. So that could be interesting. Usually that's pretty weak, unless you have good play around it, like an Isolani with the D pawn. Anyway, a lot of possible, as you can see, it's super flexible. Okay, so white's castling. Bishop decides to go to G4. I'm not sure about that. Then he goes for B4. And again, Nikki, yeah, he went. This is an example where it takes, and probably the rook takes back immediately. And so the knight would probably go here. And then you can play provocatively if you provoke a6, or you could simply drop back to like B3 or B2 and just start. You get it, and you should shift your play if you want to the B file, or you can play on B/F files, kind of swing between the two. So white would have pretty nice play, but the point is black is giving up center. And if the knight moves somewhere, you have to be careful. If the knight moves, just take the pawn and go back somewhere, free pawn. So, and then I'll actually weaken B6. So it's pretty easy. It's much easier for white to play this position, I'd say. And this is a target too. What if you later in an end game or something, you might be able to reroute your bishop. Keep that in mind. And knight B5, of course, knight B5 is very direct.
Yeah.
So that's a target. Yeah, knight B5 combined with, or if the queen could get on this diagonal later, something like that. Yeah, common themes that'll come up. So now, oh, there it is, knight B5. Well, that's a weak point. And now certainly Botvinnik has the better of it because there's no attack on D3. So again, these counterpart squares. So D5 versus D4, D6 versus D3. Seems that it's pretty much favoring him. And on the F file, we're locked up here, but Botvinnik has struck with B4 against E5 and F4 against E5. So yeah, he has everything he wants in terms of what he can achieve in the system. Or this is at least, beginning to launch this kind of attack, two-pronged attack, right? Keep them guessing between both sides. And it's very flexible. You don't have to necessarily commit. I actually wouldn't necessarily recommend pawn B5. It's better, as we know, keep the tensions usually good. They'll do that sometimes, but A4, A5, that's often good for an end game and try to invade with your rook, maybe double up, try to get your rooks on A6 or A7, you target B6, but that's a real slow plan. You can always do it later, but see, that would take away opportunity cost, no knight B5 available. So all right. Oh, did Leia have to go already? I think she had to leave around 5. Are you still Leia? I know you probably got to go soon. Yeah, hopefully I'll get through the rest of this. Leia, if you have a few minutes, hopefully I can blitz through the rest then. Okay, but a lot of ideas already they use. Okay, so knight C8, pretty much the only way to guard the A and the D pawns. So I mean, look, it's a pawn, you might just snatch the pawn and come back. And then you get to, not only is it a pawn, but it creates the outpost. They can't kick you out anymore, right? So you might just take for free, come back, and they can't go rook A and win the pawn because the queen guards laterally. So I'll take a free pawn, which is why black has to defend passively. So you can see Botvinnik's really outplaying him. And interestingly enough, A6, it would kick the knight. You can go back, then B6 gets softened up, right? So when you start doubling, you have a new invasion point on B6 when you open it. So even A6 is problematic sometimes. It's kind of like we talked about F6, things like that, softening up these points. So you might get to them once the line's open. Okay, here it is. There's your F5 commitment. Actually, it's very uncomfortable now, right? That's problematic tactically, isn't it? We gotta be careful about the bishop on G4 now. Maybe you move the knight away. If you get to move the knight, then you're going to trap the bishop most likely with H3, right? Noah's Ark kind of trap. So he takes. So you might figure you take, and then you get rid of this knight, which might be good. It's, saddling white with the quote bad bishop. But this, just like the last game, it was sleeping for a while. Those bishops will sleep, but they do come alive eventually, usually. Like let's say you just go to H3 in some cases and you just open it up, right? And if they ever take, well, sometimes even, sometimes you play the interesting, a lot of themes. Sometimes you'll play this even as a sack if black has enough coverage, because you just want to open up the bishop and create targets on the F file if you trade off these 3 pawns, right? So there's a ton of ideas with F5. It's a really rich ideas there. But first of all, we just want to move our knight and trap the bishop. So yeah, and black doesn't really want to take either, because then they lose their G pawn, right? And again, you take back, you open the bishop, access to D5 and stuff. And yeah, it's just weakening because you lost this pawn that is part of the structure. This pawn's on its own, right? Split up pawns if you take. So even if it's a sack, it's very, very common. But here it's not even a sack. It's just a nice move. And I'm sure the computer gives white a big advantage here. Yeah, +2. Hey, Henry, how you doing?
I'm fine.
Long time no see. It's been a couple months, I think. Welcome back.
There's been a couple of months I've been busy.
Sorry, what's that?
There's been a couple of months.
It's been a few months, yeah,
Or
since summertime.
there's been weeks I came online. I came on the Zoom.
Oh, you tried to come in?
Yes,
When was that?
I think the last time, but it was not going through.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was later on. I didn't see you. That's weird. Usually it'll pop up. Sorry about that. But yeah, anytime you could come, it's great to have you. So bishop takes, queen takes. So he pretty much has to give it up. But as I was saying, you figure, hey, it's a close position, not great for the bishop. And keep in mind, this bishop's a good guardian of the king. So against Sicilians, a lot of times, close Sicilians just start pushing these guys, and they'll have counterattacks, but at least the bishop covers. You can go to h1 or something like that. Another Karpovian move, right? Karpov bishops, Karpov safety move. And they say I mentioned, right, that Karpov apparently moved the king more than any GM. Just these little tightening moves.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But that'll secure your that'll secure your king for the most part. Acts like a pawn kind of in front of it. There's that. But also, yeah, so this is very similar to a closed Sicilian. It's just usually, this pawn would just be on c2. Pretty much have a closed Sicilian structure if black opts for c5 and in addition to, of course, c5 with Sicilian. In many cases, it's a common line to go e5 or e6. Great snake setup.
Can I be really annoying and ask you one more question?
No, go for it. You're asking great questions.
I'm just wondering, like how that knight went backwards to protect all the pawns. Like, is there should he just sack a pawn, and just instead of rolling over and dying like he is? It feels like
yeah, it's passive defense. Well, that's the problem. He has a passive position. It's like, well, either you do a little passive defense and hope for counterplay, but here he has no counterplay. That's the problem.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe he's hoping for a6. Well, that's the thing. He probably figures it's temporary because, yeah, it's really passive. But once you go a6, yeah, you loosen this. It might be moot. We'll see. Probably handle b6 for now. I'm just saying it's in the future.
Okay.
But once the knight goes back, then I can return. I think that's what he had in mind.
I see. Okay.
So it's it's bad, but yeah, it's temporary. Hopefully, that's his hope. But then other things happen. But as I said, keep this in mind when you guys come up with the ideas to come. I'll quiz you on this a little bit, but this bishop will be able to find ways into the game. It's not, unless it's totally locked up. No, there are always ways. It's kind of like in a Dutch, you got to wiggle your bishop out. I mean, worst comes to worst, you can, go to a4 or something like that, right? Find some way in the game. But I mean, we have better than that. But if it opens, we're going to come in. All right. See you, Leah.
Bye, Leah.
All right. So we have, and it'll be recorded so she can see the rest if she wants. All right. So queen takes g5. Okay. So black is hoping to lock it up. That's his idea. So passive defense, hoping for a draw. So people did that against Capablanca, like his V is for victory game, right? The big V. Have you guys seen that one? Where his opponent just tries to hang on for dear life and he gets crushed eventually. Yeah, look up V for victory. Capablanca has one of those pawns on chessgames.com. But yeah, Capablanca creates pawns like this and on dark squares, like this and like this. And then he only has the A file and he breaks through on the A file and wins. But he just squeezes like a boa constrictor. All right. So well, we have to activate a bit. That's what so Burnt is hoping that he just lock things up and then minimize piece activity. I mean, might have like h4 at some point or something. Probably he'll try f6 and it'll be really passive, but just try to hang in there. But we have a nice idea to try to create more activity. What do you guys think it is? It's all about piece activity here. We kind of break something open to attack while he's so passive.
Come on, Lynn, come up with something.
Hopefully she didn't have to get her packet.
Look at him.
You always come up with the good stuff.
Yeah, very positional idea. Well, at least to an attack, but it's sort of a very positional idea too, long term.
Well, would he push that F pawn? I mean, no.
Yeah. You got it.
Yeah.
Well, don't
See?
doubt yourself. Well,
Yeah.
what were you thinking about that? That you lose the F pawn? Yeah, you're certainly going to lose the F pawn because he has 3. As you talked
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
earlier, Lynn, the control of F6. Well, it's a weak square, very much a weak. Well, F5 and F6 are both weak, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you remove your F pawn. Let's remove the F pawn as we're going to do. Now look at that. Now we have access. Not only that, there's our bishop coming out. Boom. Now we have what we want.
Yeah.
So you lose a pawn. I
Nice.
mean, you lose a pawn in order to be able to attack his pawn, right? Your position's not attackable. His is basically, he really can't attack you here. He can throw the G pawn back at you. I mean, just probably take it, and then queen comes in the game, and that's terrible. Pieces are. Lynn, you were going to add something else about the F6 idea?
No.
Nice move.
Oh, well, at the very least, we can maybe just take C8. The queen can't take the fork on D6. That knight never, but yeah. So Nikki, the knight never did move. He was hoping to obviously play. He just
Yeah.
never got. I don't know why he didn't get. Was he not able to get A6 in? I think it's because, well, it's initiative here. He plays knight B5. He doesn't really give him any time to breathe here because he goes knight B5. Let's get rid of this stuff. I'll home in on this with the tool thing. All right. So knight B5, knight C8. So basically, again, I mean, but again, like your question about, so he thinks he's going to hang on, but your question about just going to this position again, can you just give away a pawn? I was talking about taking on A7. Taking on A7 is actually a very powerful, strong idea. It's like endgame insurance.
Yeah.
You can maybe even like take and play C6. No, I don't even know. If you have your bishop open, that'll be nice later on. Like
Well, couldn't he just take the D6 pawn as well?
yeah. So, well, he's got to cover D6 for sure. Well, like for
Yeah.
example, like I guess Nikki, you're referring to like holding D6 but hanging A7.
Right.
So,
Something like anything.
something
I
like,
just don't know where he went wrong so badly. Like it just seems like it's like he never had a chance. I don't know like where he went wrong.
Yeah, that's why the
He didn't
Botvinnik
want to go
system.
wrong either. So I'll just try to find it, like
Right. And that's why the Botvinnik system is really nice because it kind of
yeah.
sneaks up. Well, that's the thing. Like once you play F4, it's just a really strong idea. And that's, by the way, that's one of the reasons that black has C6 in. So just to give an example, F5 can be a sack pretty soon sometimes because when you take back, you unleash the bishop. Let's say there's an attack on the rook, or not that you necessarily want to give up the bishop because it's very important to cover your light squares, especially as it opens, right? But still, you might like be able to take B7 in some lines or something. So keep in mind, just so you guys, this is an important theme. So there's that stuff. And then black hasn't met, he has no response, basically.
No
Well,
queen
this is
B6,
coming.
nothing, right?
You
Like
need to
just
have
can't. Can't. He's got
It's
nothing.
tough. Well, I mean, I guess if he waits for H3, G4, then he might finally take, since white can't take back with the pawn and player. But then white has the half open F file. So it's either you have a pawn storm, like in the last game, or you have or you open lines. Similar to this, you either press him like I was talking about this idea, or you just open lines for the rook. So yeah, but as for something like this, where we were after knight B5, I like how he's doing this combined with the B4 idea. A lot of play here on the queen side, but that's the thing, like he's not getting fixated on the king side. Actually, the fact that you've driven the knight away helps your king side attack, I think. So things are tangled. He's tangling them. But now F5, yeah, basically once you get F5 in, it's pretty difficult. And again, they will try to play G5 and F6. And usually the remedy there, and that's why it'd be better than at least because then they don't allow F6. No, the moment G5 was played, like I said, H4 is a theme sometimes. We would just take it and queen or something like that. But it is a theme sometimes. But yeah, his idea is to just look, you don't have a knight there anymore. So you just play F6 and open everything up. But remember, that's the thing, like he part of this, it worked out perfectly. Part of it was he kind of forces the bishop to give itself up for the knight. And again, you think, oh, the bishop's not good. That's why I throw this at you. You throw it at them. And then the bishop suddenly comes to life. So everything works out perfectly. The F5, F6 idea, combined with bishop B3, H3, combined with the fact that the bishop took on E2. So it's very powerful. And as we saw, there are tactical ideas in bishop H3. All right. Knight C8, 5. But yeah, and the other thing, Nikki, is you would just take, yeah, I think you just take A7 and come back, and that's your endgame insurance.
Nice.
So yeah, did I show you the line? Did we do the line real quick? I was trying to show a line. Just want to finish that idea. So where was it? It was knight c8. Yeah. So the idea was like, what was it going to be? Knight f6 or something? We didn't actually play it.
Right.
Yeah, just
Like
take.
something, anything. Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah,
you
just
said that
take.
endgame insurance.
Yeah, exactly. No, but not only that, and you have you have an outpost for your knight, which is not just a moot outpost. It's going to be great there because it's going to keep targeting d6 the whole game, tying the
And the
queen.
queen's guarding a2, and yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, and then you can start. I mean, if you want, you could start some queenside action. I'd probably just double on the b file, start some ideas there. But yeah, you can do that. No, you do that slash f5. Yeah. So knight c8, and then. So we have this position. Yeah, it's just really strong. So, I was mentioning g4, like this is just good. You know, you're hitting the bishop. This is opened up, and you're not even down a pawn.
Nice.
And you have the f5 square. You can reroute sometimes too. I kind of like the knight here though. There's target. Yeah, this has got to be loose. I'm sure. Again, check the computer. I'm gonna guess what, +4, +5, something really good. +6. Yeah, you can just see positional pressure. It's just, well, that's position, or it's tactical weakness.
Yeah, you
Positional
got it, +6.
tactical weakness. Yeah, something like that. Tactical.
Okay.
I mean, look at the lines though. So basically, you effectively traded off the light squared bishop. So you got rid of your bad bishop, but you had the grip on the light squares. Just like they're playing on dark squares, but they never utilized them. You won the battle of the squares. Who's gonna get a better sort of complex of squares? You know what I mean? So your complex of squares ended up working out for you. You're playing on light squares. You ended up exploiting those completely. And now it's just, tactics flow from the computer sees, +6, because it knows something bad's about to happen. Something's going to go down, right? Too much. Yeah, there's just too much pressure on everything. You can double or sack on f7 or something. Yeah. So, and I think Richard just came in. Is it Richard? Hey, Richard. Wait, bunch of different people.
Oh,
Who is
who is it? Which one are you?
Anyway, so are you just gonna hang out, or he's just gonna be a fly on the wall, I guess. All right, but feel free to share your actual, which one we're gonna go with, unless you're all of the above. Oh, the delivery's here. All right.
All right.
Nice work as usual.
Well,
Nice,
Silent, it's
very
always
nice
good seeing
finds.
you.
Thanks.
Great
Thanks.
finds, Lynn. You found some
Weekend.
awesome.
Okay.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, Lynn.
All right. So we got, yeah, it's just really nice. So tactics flow from a superior position. This is it's not exactly a tactic. It's a positional sacrifice, but it's going to lead to tactics, certainly. It's a move that creates overwhelming piece activity. And if nothing else, it's about freeing your piece, your bishop plus your rook. But you're like, look, I free my pieces, I hit the weak square. So it's really important, like, just have that move in your lexicon, kind of have that in your, in your mind's eye. This is a good move, you double check in an actual game, but especially, all the conditions exist to justify this move. Right. Bishop's on the diagonal, rook's opening. So it's the frustration of, like, you got to be a little frustrated. Like, look, I want to get to your position. I can't. Well, that's what I'm doing with f5. But keep in mind, there's so many important themes here that I've seen through my experience in Grandmaster games. So, for example, I play this a lot in Blitz too, of course, but I've played this in tournaments. So what was his name? Is it Costin or something? He has a book on what I was going to say when Leia mentioned this, that there wasn't a book. At the beginning, she mentioned there's not a book on it. But the thing is, I think it's Costin, the GM, I think it's a British GM, if I'm recalling correctly. So he has this, like, a Grandmaster series, whatever they call it in the English. And he recommends that you do the Botvinnik system against, like, even against any kind of, I guess, C4, E5 stuff. I think he just, any kind of closed up, like a reversed close Sicilian or something. He says, just play E4. And that would be equivalent to black, so black playing a closed Sicilian with E5. Which is kind of the setup he's adopted, right? Anyway, so yeah, but just a really important stuff right here. So, what I was going to say, one more thing though. If you take on f6, sometimes it's like you're giving up a pawn you've gotten to the 5th rank for one that's on their 3rd rank. So it's like, yeah, you might do it. For example, you open the F file and you create pressure here. You might do it, but this is like the threat is greater than the execution. the thing is, you're not afraid. You don't, if he takes, that's even better because you're gonna have an outpost double up. That's great. Bishop's coming. That's great for you. If he doesn't take, well, you have the option to take whenever you want. Stay flexible when you're ready to pull that. And G5 is met. Now we know it's met by F6. And again, sometimes H4 stuff. Like if you're like this somehow and like everything's locked, then H4. But in this case, they haven't played F6. So a lot of important nuances in this type of position. Obviously, it depends on the position itself, but you know which themes to look for. Again, F5 often has a sack, F6 as a sack, because you justify it. And there's no light square bishop, uncontested bishop. Knight C3, knight E7. So he comes, oh, there you go. He came back. See? And now A3. And that's, I see all these themes I'm talking about. Now, you notice like in the last game, remember he secured his queenside just a bit before going for the kill with queen H6. So a little prophylaxis. Well, one thing, like I said, this is just bad. That's just nice. That's what white wants. That's just nice. He gives up this, again, he's giving up his grip. Not to say you want to play D4 because you weaken C4. You can if you want in the future. So you open up the D file or something. But the point is just a nice structure. You can return to the A file, target on A6. It's just very comfortable. You might even hit him with C5. You have a lot of flexibility to thrust your pawns forward. You take away any squares. It's just good. And you remember, you're trading actually a C pawn for an A pawn, since the A pawn replaces the B pawn. So it's just good for you. So you have that option if he takes. And it's just that, when you move your rook, let's say he's ready to double rooks, for example, which is attractive, then you don't have to worry about this annoying capture. Like, oh, what do I do with my knight now? I want my knight maybe on C3. So if his knight's move, I hop into D5, maybe as a remove the defender tactic, just like where was it in the previous game? Well, to get the knight from E8 and take it. Although we didn't even need that, as we saw. But yeah, lots of cool themes. All right, so queen D1, but a lot of flexibility, prophylaxis. 98. Okay, there's that 98 again, defensive move. Okay. Oh, it's not right. I'm guessing it's Richard because I know a Richard who's on the list. I'm thinking it's Richard, or maybe all of the above. That's cool too. All right. So 98. Maybe it's just a long name. 98. Although no, I think it's a compliment. He has Lynn in there. Yeah. I think it's a homage to the class. Okay. So 98. Rook to B2. So there's the rook lift idea. So actually, and there's some nice attacking games. Funny enough, one by Botvinnik, I think it is, where he goes for B4 and there's the ability to go rook B3 and swing. So again, like this queen side play combined with king side play, you might do both. You might just intimidate him a little bit, make him tied down. But if nothing else, you get space to do the lift, just like we talked about this one. Black had minimal space, but at least it allowed certain defensive concepts. In this case, obviously, they're attacking concepts. But look at those light squares. I just love that. Control of light squares, target on F6. If the knight moves, yeah, that's what, like, for example, knight D5 might trade off one of the knights, might have like queen H5 or something like that. Some sack, who knows what. Don't forget about the H4 idea. You might do like H file play. All right, is it working now, Richard?
Yep. Thank you.
How you doing? This is Richard of the Rockville Chess Club, right?
Yeah.
Is it Chess Center or Chess Club?
Chess club.
Right,
And
okay.
yeah,
Oh, I
Diego's
buy
also
stuff from you all the time.
What's that? You get emails
I
from
buy
them?
stuff from, yeah, I'm always buying stuff from your chess club. The one in New York?
no, not Marshall, Rockville.
Oh, I know, but New York
Well,
State? like?
it's a different Rockville, I guess.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Maryland, Rockville.
Just in the DC area, DMV, they call it. DC.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Or Richard, what were you saying about the class?
Oh, Diego's a member too, Diego.
Yeah, it was fun. That was a lot of fun. When I did the class on Monday there, and then Timur Gareev, the blindfold champion, 48 games blindfold Guinness World Record. He didn't do blindfold, but he did a regular simul after me. So that was fun.
I think the final one was 20. You got 22 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I got one.
I didn't see that. One guy had a rucksack, 4 move ahead rucksack. Kind of
Yeah.
like, that's
Actually,
cool.
I mistook. I thought it was actually a fishing hook where he sacrificed his knight and Timur took it.
It was the knight or it was the rook?
It was well, I guess it was both actually. But
knight and then rook. Why not?
It was both.
Okay.
It was like in this position, it would be knight G5 and takes with a pawn, and then let's say there's no bishop on h3, but then there would have been a rook
Pawn
on
takes?
h2. Yeah.
Oh, so, right. The pawn takes and opens up the rook or something. We talked about that with H. Sometimes when you're
Yeah, so it was both. It was both a rook.
Open it up.
Yeah, it was both a rook and a knight sack.
Oh, so opened up the.
I don't think I would have done it during the game because I think during the game I think I missed a mate and 4 that involved the rook. So I'm just very in the normal OTB game wary about sacking. But good for him. I did manage to draw.
You gotta play for a win. If it leads to a chance of win, you gotta try and make it work, right? Or
True.
All right, so let's check it. So we're in the middle of the game. Here, so what just happened?
That's okay. That's okay. You could
No, I'll just show you where we are.
Oh,
So F5,
okay.
I'm just gonna show you where we are now. So F5 was just played, which is, and as Nikki said, it's like, wait, what happened? It's all of a sudden white's just taking over. A few features, there's something just didn't, it just kind of went wrong. And knight b5 hits d6 and a7, pulls him back. He gets pressure here. He gets that, but this is very typical. And once you get f4, a lot of times you hit the bishop on e6, and again, sometimes with the sack, just to strike at it and open up your own bishop. It's just like once you get this initiative going, it's really hard to stop. It's hard to stop it in general, really, unless black has time for f5, which is messy. So yeah, that's why actually that's one of the reasons that a lot of people like it, because it's like a ready-made attack, similar to a King's Indian attack, right? Which would, again, that would be with the pawn on c2, or for black when he's still on c7. It's like that, but with the addition of the pawn on c4, which grabs more light squares. So it's an interesting variation on the King's Indian. So the addition, and since you're playing white, you got that first free move. You insert that move, like, okay, I'm playing a King's Indian with the insertion of c4, grabbing some more light squares. So, and then again, that's the flexibility. You'd like to play f4, f5 and attack him, but you might also go for d4. You might also go for b4. You might do all the above. I had one game where I got to do all the above. That was pretty fun. All right, so bishop takes, queen takes, g5. Beautiful move, brilliant position. Although it's very logical once you look at it, but it's a nice, strong, at least one exclamation mark for the positional sacrifice. Bishop h3, a6. For GM, it's like, okay, very natural. Knight c3, knight e7, a3, castles. Okay, now we were here, queen d1. Now that's a kind of mysterious move, although he plays rook b2, so that's why he did it. So it's a kind of a queen retreat in order to activate your rooks on the f file, and he just sits there. He just sits there on b4, and he's comfortable. And there's your f6. Good thing is he hasn't locked in our f pawn, because again, that does get a little tricky. He might get some drawing chances with the f pawn. So we've sacked our f pawn, ensuring we can play for a win, definitely. But how? Okay, still got to win this. It's not easy. But black is just so passive. Look at our bishops compared to his g7 bishop. And his knights aren't doing anything. All right, he doesn't even have knight e6. He'd like to do knight e6 to d4. He doesn't have that either right now. So knight c6. Okay, there's that one. Knight d5. So now he's offering, it's about when you offer the trade. This is very sensible to offer the trade. Why do you think it's good? For example, did he take? Oh, he did take. We'll look at it in a moment. Knight d4, bishop takes, pawn takes. So he's probing a bit. Well, now he's just threatening that a pawn again in some cases, maybe trade knights and take. He'll play rook a8, never mind. Probably doesn't work yet, but he has ideas like that. Looking at the a pawn, or just queen. How about queen c6? That looks good. Let's invade on c6. So, and if he goes b5, then I would just keep striking at him somehow. Maybe just take and come in with the queen. I think it's actually very similar to what happened. You'll see. So he does take, and we take. So again, why is it beneficial now, after all this work that white's done to accumulate the advantage? Now, white doesn't have really a mating attack now. He just has a domination of the position. So why does this help white here? A couple of ways.
I think, it's a good pawn structure. It controls the c6 and e6 squares.
That's a big, right? And that's, again, just domination of the light square complex.
Yeah.
What's that, Nikki?
Yeah, I was saying the same thing, like those light squares are,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, just everything is, and then this, well, the thing about this bishop on g4, putting pressure on c8 means you can just take we can actually just go back now. It's beautiful, right? So flexible. You go for this one, rook doubled here, and then we just go back again. Or well, one rook was just chilling on f1, but we went here, and then we can go back again, double invasion on c6 or c7, or maybe c8 in some, because we have so much firepower. Maybe we can triple, right? c6, triple, queen c2 or something like that, Alekhine's gun or something, c4, c6, queen c2, whatever we want to do. We just kind of have a field day. But the point is now we're ready because we have again, this uncontested, like it came up with Lynn originally, like last year, the concept of the uncontested bishop. We both have uncontested bishops, but we don't care about that one. Actually, that's a target. That's a tall pawn. And as I say, it's worse than a pawn because it can't even go here and support f5 or something, right? Or h5, can't do anything. And it's going to be targeted now. So yeah, this is very important. We should take this way. We keep our grip on these squares. We keep a beautiful diagonal. We can toss in a check if we want. So we're dominating this kind of V of the light squares. And then that gives us the ability to control the C file uncontested because so uncontested bishop, diagonal, file, right? Squares. This is essential. And again, maybe an evaluation slightly less. I'm not sure. I would still give it a plus several points. Maybe it's +5 still. No, it's less than it was because like we didn't end up getting a mating attack and we did sack a pawn. So maybe the computer finds some amazing resources for black to at least stay in the game. But obviously it's just a grind kind of position where a normal human playing this game, I mean, it's very, very difficult to have the black pieces in this position. But yeah, +2 is not too shabby. That's like a plus over minus though, as opposed to which I grew up using, right? Plus over minus whatever, plus anything under I'd say +2 or around there, like +1.5, that's plus over minus. Maybe under +1's like plus over equal for slight advantage, and then plus minus is like up a piece territory, 2.5, 3 or more. That's what I would kind of like. Just no, but not just 2.5 that'll swing, but you've locked basically. It's not over yet, but you've locked it in at plus minus or black minus plus minus next to plus. That's when you've locked it in. Basically, you can use the annotations on. Like these annotations, right? See, it says white is winning. But now as for you can use your common sense. But if you're up a clean piece, it's winning. If you have like, again, before you had such an attack, whereas here it's minus plus, it's like almost to that. That's why I say it's somewhere around +2, I think, from what I recall, because it's not that threshold, right? I would say winning positionally, but you have to prove it a little more before we can say you've locked it in. Because who knows, maybe black has some crazy resource, trades off the rooks or whatever. You never know. Let's say black ends up trading off the rooks and they're down. White wins some pawns back, black's down a pawn, black holds. You never know. So it's not over yet, but it's very good. Now the point is, it's good to take now because we have C file, diagonal, E6 square, all that, A6 weakness, and they have nothing to do. It's completely one-sided. We like that. I'd rather have a one-sided end game that's significantly better than a very like we have an attack but it's unclear. Well, that's what speaking of Karpov, that's his kind of approach, although he would draw a lot that way, but very low risk. But just in general, like this is one-sided. This many times these kinds of positions might be a forced win in 20 moves, so I'd rather have that, a long forced win, than an uncertain, nice attack but maybe more uncertain.
Me
But you
too.
should be able to win anyway in this situation. For practical purposes. Yeah, I think that for practical purposes, it's getting worse and worse. Should be done. So we own the file. Well, really now black is getting counterplay, but this is coming down to the 7th rank and the pressure here. So you can hit him on the dark squares and it's easy to hit him on the light squares. So you take over, you're getting control of everything soon enough. Okay, now you're down some pawns. It doesn't matter. Okay, we're attacking the pawn, but it's about doubling. Okay, now we're threatening mate in 3, right?
Right.
The hogs coming in.
Blind swine.
Oh, the blind swine, right? That's the name of it.
Yeah.
Funny,
Yes,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that for a long time. I just know the mate, right? I know
Yeah.
yeah, it's called the blind swine, right? Just come on in. And that rook is just really, I guess, is he the blind swine that's getting in the way? But or they're just coming in. And it doesn't matter if they see it or not, they're just going to barrel down. Okay, so rook A1 check, king F2, and this is done because there's no defense on the 7th rank, and we just have to stop the checks. Well, for example, it might look like he has bishop move. The only move he has is bishop H6. We don't need to just we can win a piece. We had better though. How do you mate? Let's say he goes bishop h6. Wait, what was the last move? Well, he already attacked this, but right now he needs to stop this mate, the blind swine. So let's say only bishop move. It can throw in checks. Let's say he goes bishop h6. Where's the mate? Or very close to, essentially should be mating very soon.
Does this involve the bishop, e6?
Yeah, let's toss that. That's where we're going to hit the light squares. And then we'll finish. But the point is he's given us access to hit him on dark squares now. So bishop e6 check, king 4. Well, yeah, like I said, I mean, maybe he can fight on for a couple moves with rook f7. Okay, take with check, and then he keeps setting up your like a ladder mate. Okay, so we have bishop e6 check, king h8, and then stuck in the corner.
And then rook h7 check. I mean,
Check
this
and-
might have to. This might have to be a little bit more drawn out than I
No,
like.
no, check and
Yeah,
check and mate.
yeah.
That's done. No, he can't come out. Yeah, he can't go anywhere.
Okay.
That's a mate. Yeah, you got him. So yeah, so he can check you a few times, but because there's no defense on the 7th rank, actually it's interesting because he's the funny enough, he has some ideas of rook 8 to a2, trying to pull your, well, if you take g7, if you don't have a follow-up check, he's gonna mate because of this annoying pawn. Hey, there's the value of that pawn. It does create a mating net, but no, you're not going to give him time. Okay, let's find the finish then. So we do this. Okay, it's got to be forcing. Well, we're up at bishop, so it's one of the situations like previously where you're going for a mating attack, the g7 stuff, and like, okay, it's good enough, you win a clean piece. So here at the very least, we're going to be up the bishop if we don't hang it on g4. So what do we have? Look for a forcing win, made him resign in 2 moves.
There's what, bishop d7.
Yeah, we're trying to calculate from there, from
And
here.
then,
The bishop d7, king d8, and then
yeah,
you lure him away from the f rook, from the f7 rook.
yeah.
And again, you don't need mate. You need to not get
Mhm.
mated yourself, and you need to have a
Yeah.
winning position. Because
Yeah,
you have to take a little bit to set up your mate, it looks like. So what's the most practical way to win this then? So bishop d7 check, king d8. Because you can't allow the mate, of course. So you need to stop that in a forcing way.
Yeah.
So what do you do next?
Rook G1, G8.
Right. Nikki, right? Nick rook g8.
Yeah.
And then what? It's not mate because he has this move. Although it's very decisive. Now you actually could trade rooks and you're still winning because you have a bishop, but actually you have a very clean finish after king c7. Again, I don't think you're
Is it like discovered? Is it like
Yeah.
discovered? You just
yeah,
moved?
you just do discovered check, and of course the
Maybe.
bishop goes to attacking you. Where do you think
It
the
might-
bishop is?
I think it might go. I'd probably go over to c6.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
C. Yeah, you just win the
yeah.
rook. Yeah,
Yeah,
like again, you can. It's good enough if even if you didn't have that, like if the rook were somewhere else, you can just take, just trade it, and you take away their mate, and then you take the b pawn, and it's like it'll take you a little bit, but you're up a bishop, and you'll just pick off. You'll use your bishop and rook to pick off those pawns over here, and that's game. But still, a little bit of complication. But when we do this, he just resigned after rook g8. I don't think it does make a difference. I don't think it makes a difference which rook it is. Check, and then yeah, he knows this is coming. He already resigned. But is there a mate? Wait, there might be a mate. Is there? There is a mate. You can say no. There is a mate. Looks like it. Wait, is there? Yeah,
Yeah,
there is. Because no, you take this, and then so you don't let him go to b4, and then you get a mate like this. Yeah. So again, I'm just looking at good enough, like even without calculating, I'm like, okay, that's obviously done. Even if a bishop up, it's done, but that's nice. Well, this is a mate too. That's a nice mate. So you covered everything. Again, there's your light, finishing on the light. Well, you're using the light squares. So using all the white squares to get him on his dark squares where the knight was trying to be, right? But yeah, he got a little bit smothered in there. So yeah, so it looks like it is a forced mate, which is why he resigned. Yeah, there's no way. because if he goes to the A file, you just take. But it's a finesse because, well, you can mate any way you want actually. You can take first and then mate this way. You take your pick. But yeah, but the thing is, if you take this first, you don't even let him go to the B file. So in some cases, you might need that. Yeah. So you see slightly different themes. I think the first game was more just all out attack on the F file, combined with dealing with the D4 square. This time, well, in both cases we took, although interestingly, you gave up your bishop in this case. But your bishop was biting on granite. They had the bad bishop, but this knight was not bad. So you're willing to give this up. And then it's like, well, think about the minor piece balance. So this is important where you have to figure out which ones to trade. So you figure this is better than this. G4 is better than G7. So it's like, okay, it's kind of inevitable. You can't avoid the trade. You want to get to D5. You can't avoid the trade. So you let him take. But when you take back, you gain the space, you gain the C file. And the space enables you with the pawn here on E6 enables you to anchor the bishop, which is completely dominating and assists your C file effort, which happened through this. And by taking on D4, when he took back this way, that also assisted the opening of the C file. So it all worked out perfectly. But the point is when it comes, even if it didn't work out exactly like that, the point is this exchange, it yields these pieces, which is clearly superior for you. And the other thing is, like I said, it is biting on granite. So it's like, you know what, this knight's pretty good. It's not doing that much. Maybe they'll back it up. Yeah, there you go. They're going to back it up. Don't give them time to do that. So you have a good knight. They have a good knight. They can take back. Yeah, just get rid of it. That's important though. In the previous game, so you filled it in both games. In this game, it led to the morphing of the pawn structure, which you evaluated was really good in the end game, pretty much winning. Again, maybe black holds on for a while. And then in the first game, meeting again, I think I don't know why he just kind of misplayed it. I mean, I guess this is a move. What's the score on that? It's not a good score. Knight BD7. Yeah, knight C6 is a little more even. C6 is the one that scores, and this is not exhaustive in this database. C6 is the one that apparently does the best for black. That has a relatively large sample size. But yeah, no, I've had this position before. So, but I'm not sure about the knight. Well, the problem is he goes here, and then he decides to go to, no, the idea is to go to E6, but if you go to E6, then you're going to get hit now at F5 with a tempo. So, and then there you go with the H. And like I said, H3 is very useful because you stop knight G4, but then you're ready immediately with G4, G5, which is what he ended up doing. So he gets this in first. Yeah, exactly. It is not. And the remedy here is we don't need to take, see, if we take with the knight, we get forked. So we move the bishop, probe the position. This time we don't get forward and back. Last time we probed and we gain back. This time we simply, he doesn't play F6 or something. He just trades it off, which is fine. Weaken the dark squares a bit, trade it. And then we have this, we create a scenario where our opponent has zero counterplay, actually in both cases. And here, your knight is just really strong coming to F4. But really what's happening is you create these trades, kill the tension. So you're ready to kill the tension because you're going for a mating attack. You have a massive attack with Queen H6 and G5. And again, Knight H5, you attack the knight. And you have G5, F6 creating this mating idea. And as we saw, well, what if you had gone here? I think we're still going to try to find a creative way to hit the knight. No, we're just going to do this. We're just going to do this. Again, I was trying to get the knight, but yeah, this is just very straightforward win. Oh yeah, and remember, if let's say he does, okay, whatever, says pass, let's say we just get this in somehow. You still can't play King H8. But even if theoretically he had that in somehow, theoretically, let's just say whatever, let's just say waiting move here, you'd have this way to win too. Anastasia's type mate, like the Anastasia's where you check, they move over, you stack your queen, then you lift your rook on one of the ranks. Yeah, so this is just irresistible, but you just have to assess that this attack is good enough. But once you see that you can boot the knight, and then you just set up your rook lift, and wait, oh, he resigned now though. Maybe he saw knight D5, but as we saw, even if he feels like playing something timid like knight, which is completely unnecessary, still wins. So yeah, those are pretty nice, right? And those are just bot. I'll pull up here. I'll show you guys real quick. I'll share with you this collection I found. So it'll be in the chat. Let me pause. I'll just pause share for a second. Pull this up. So the one against Sherbakov is from the USSR Championship in '55. And the one against Soderbergh, the second one, is from Stockholm in 62. So 55 and 62. All right. So this is, where's the collection? There it is. So we have this chessgames.com collection. So Botvinnik System. So this is nice. You know, that's where I just found some of the Botvinnik games on here. He has a few draws too. You might want to see where he loses. So if you want to know how to beat it, just look at this game. See how Petrosian beats it at around Petrosian's prime, I think, in the 60s. And then I guess Botvinnik's prime was what, 50s more, right? He was more 50s, Petrosian was more 60s, I think. Okay, Topalov. Yeah, so look at where black wins too. I mean, we focused on white these games. Obviously, white's winning a lot of these. Yeah, Costin. So yeah, look up Costin. The English book is like Grandmaster Preparation or something in the English, and he recommends it. And you see that he adopts it. Oh no, he doesn't do it. No, he goes E3. So it's not actually, it's the Great Snake. That's funny. He recommends it. No, look, he does it later. That's kind of weird. But you know, he does it later because he's like, all right, I don't want you to play D5. And then we have something, and I'm sure he went for F4. And it's funny enough, it's like the same thing. Well, that's weird, right? It's almost the exact. Wow. Is it the same game?
What in the world?
It's
Yeah,
exactly. That's crazy. It's funny that we found that. It's very, but I mean, every time, like, the same themes, but this is where you have to use your independent judgment, because it's gonna, manifest itself in many ways. But in this case, it's another demolition of the light squares and bishop pair. And I imagine some stuff is coming to H5 and the H file eventually, and just overwhelming light square pressure. And that's game. I don't see anything. There's a defense. What is the combo? Is there like some way to win the queen here? Ooh, that's nice. The king's got to go to F7. What is the combo here real quick? Is there a mate coming up? Yeah, do you guys see the mate after King F7? It's complete. I mean, you just know it's winning when you look at this, but still. King F7, King F7, then what? Let me move.
D7?
Queen D7?
Queen D7?
Yeah, exactly. Did he resign? He probably resigned. Yeah, I think he resigned at bishop. Wait. No, so yeah, that's why so the queen gave itself up. But yeah, if King F7 is mate, so he's win the queen. It's actually still a little bit of work to do. Yeah, but the king is
fun work though.
Yeah, it's fun work. So it's yeah, but if you don't have any pawns or very few pawns, it could be drawish. Or
scary work though too.
There's no fortress. Yeah, there's no fortress here. And so this extra pawn coming in, the C file will happen. Yeah, and that's game. Rook takes, we just come on in, and yeah, that's game. So yeah, so those are cool. So here's the game collection. You can look at, well, the first one's a draw against Spassky, actually. It would be interesting. Then you got modern players like Mamajarov from is it Azerbaijan or Georgia? No, Azerbaijan, right? All right, so send this. Okay, there's that collection. So chessgames.com. But if you just Google English Botvinnik System by King G, so just Google all that. English Botvinnik System collection, King G chess games. Or for the YouTube video, I don't think it'll show up on there. So, but yeah, there's that Costin. There's that Costin, and you can just see how he adopts. Does he do it? No, yeah, he does. This time he goes, so he mixes it up. He went for the Great Snake, transposed into a Botvinnik, which I've done sometimes as well. But yeah, I'm sure he's gonna get F4. I would be surprised if he didn't get F4. Oh no, this is different actually. Black goes F5, there you go. If black goes F5, there's a reaction. So just like we have remedies to knight D4, now we have a remedy to F5.
Finally something like God.
Yeah, there's some resistance by black now.
Yeah.
And then he has to work a little more. He creates, oh, beautiful. Look what he does. Yeah, I've seen some nice games. Then he fills in the hole, dominant knight on C6, and then what, B5? Yeah, exactly, B5. Because now if C6, he's going to take and rip open this die, and then he's going to knight B4 and win the C pawn. Then now we have, since he did F5 though, we have this amazing bishop on G2, and look at the awful pawn, that poor pawn. We can hop our knight around, and then now we're threatening 6, and we'll find it. Then we hang our rook because you can't take his knight G6 forks, and then we can swing all.
F5's maybe not bad.
Swing all over the place. What's that?
Maybe it's better just to like crab it up and like just no F5. Because this looks way worse. No,
but as you saw, this is the counterplay option. The other option is utter passivity.
Yeah.
So Oh, that's
Good.
nice. Oh, that's nice. It reminds me of like a Trojan game, I think. Yeah, so it looks like, okay, knight for bishop. And then you win that. But the problem is you're gonna get the queen, because if they move the H pawn, you fork. If they move the queen, you have a mate. Because the knight G7's covered. So you win the queen back. And then you're
Yes,
up a knight, and you're up a knight and a bishop. So that's a nice idea. I'll send you guys that game too, because
Yeah,
that's
that's a cool one.
that's a pretty cool game. I like that game. But just Google Google the costing. No, just look at the collection and just look for the costing games, because he knows the English really, really well, since he wrote the whole book on it. That's like his main thing in his career, I guess. So check that out.
Yeah, those are
Hey, you guys have any questions?
Mm.
Oh,
No,
what were you
I'm
saying?
gonna take a
What were you
look
saying,
at
Nikki?
those. Oh, I was just saying, I'm gonna take a look at that. I just bookmarked what that link for that you sent, so I'm definitely gonna go through those. Those are really cool.
Cool, cool. Yeah, they're great games, and you'll learn a lot. Just like any system is flexible, which is great. But you know, like any system, you'll learn a lot from the pawn structures, and you don't have to memorize stuff really. You can memorize a few lines, maybe just remember. Oh, if they do this, bishop b6 line. I remember that the f5 sack, g takes, e takes. Just in general, that's a good sack, the f pawn push. But I remember it worked there for such and such a reason. Then there's a sack on f5 on the bishop on f5 or whatever, and bishop h3. You might remember a few traps. But the point is, you know the concepts, and as you saw, it was very similar in the costing game. He just had to execute it differently. So yeah, but you'll learn some really important concepts about queenside strikes, kingside strikes, how to carry out the kingside attack, similar to a closed Sicilian, although it may be better than a closed Sicilian. Closed Sicilian is not necessarily that great for white. Black gets a ton of counterplay. The idea here is with c4, you're gripping the light squares. So for example, there's not, like, it's very hard for black to achieve the D5 counterbreak or something like that's one of the main concepts, of course. And then in that game, beautiful game. I think I've seen that one before, very similar ones where the knight just hops into D5, sits proudly there. And it's a de facto outpost, because like kind of an advanced support point, because you can play C6, but you take it and win the C pawn, or just destroys black structure with B takes C6. So you guys have any questions?
No, thank you, David. That was a great lesson. I gotta roll out, but I always look forward to your class, so thank you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, look forward to having you guys.
Okay.
So I'll see you. Let me know if you have any ideas next week, any ideas for the topics. I'll stop.
Maybe the Carlsbad. I don't know if you've gone over.